So I'm at this conference, and every break, all the managers are on the phones and stuff, and I'm not. And somebody's like, "Why isn't your team calling you?" And I'm like, "Because they know what they're supposed to be doing, and they're doing it." I left them resources in case, but they don't need me.
Welcome to Sterling Visionary Voices, the podcast dedicated to bringing you diverse, innovative leadership insights and actionable strategies for success. Join hosts Laura McNeil and Bob Medeiros as they explore the art and science of role model leadership through thought-provoking conversations with real professionals. Whether you're a seasoned leader or aspiring to excellence, Sterling Visionary Voices is your guide to navigating the complexities of your leadership journey.
One of my favorite Undercover Boss episodes is on waste management, when the boss learns that the ability of workers to pull plastics off the paper belt line is short of miraculous, if not even impossible. Given the management's mandated super fast belt speed, our undercover boss realizes that the real answer to foregoing damage caused by the plastics gumming up in the paper eating machine is to slightly slow the speed of the belt that's feeding it, not punishing the workers that are trying to protect it. Quality takes the right amount of time, patience, and focus. We are here with Dr. Nina Wade today. Nina has a PhD in industrial organizational psychology and has heavily researched and studied the impact of archetypes in organizations. Welcome, Nina. I'm super happy to have you with us today so you can tell us your story.
Thank you, Laura. I appreciate that. No, actually, what you just gave in that example is amazing because oftentimes people think of, upper leadership as only caring about strategy and only caring about, that bottom line. Whereas, the workers and the middle management and everything are trying to deal with the execution. And it almost becomes a tug of war between strategy versus execution. And what I kind of want to talk about today is how you can incorporate and make it where it's strategy and execution. So I know, back a long time ago in my career, at one point, I was doing operations management. And it was amazing to me when I came into the position. The first thing I heard from upper leadership was, well, you've got a team and maybe they can wipe down a desk and maybe they can answer the phone. And I won't even say they can answer the phone correctly all the time. And I'm sitting here and I look and I say, well, wait a minute. I have team members who are very, very smart. And why are you saying that? And they're like, yep, they just, don't get it. So one of the things I did as a manager coming in brand new is first of all say, okay, we got to change this. This is not good for anybody. It's not good for the organization. They were our frontline employees, so they were the employees that were the ones who usually dealt with everybody coming in. And that's not a good reputation to have. So the one thing I recognized early on was if you don't have a strategy, you don't have a plan, you can't institute, the execution well because nobody has a purpose. They don't know why you're doing this. They just know you're giving them tasks and you're giving them work, but why should I do this work? So that was one of the first things I did was start working with myself going, okay, where is it I see this team in 6 months? Where is it I see it in a year? What is it I want to see this team be known for? What can they accomplish? And this is one of those things that I think leaders do a lot of. We think about what is the future going to look like? So what we did next was, I wanted input from them because they're doing the day-to-day duties. They know what's working and what's not working. So I would share my vision with them and I would say, okay, this is where I see the team going. you think this is a good idea? Should we, do something different instead? How do you feel about this vision? And I was, of course, new boss comes in. Unfortunately, not everyone's going to agree with your vision, and that's totally acceptable. And so I did have some members that left and said, no, we can't, I don't want to follow that vision. And that was fine. Um, they went on to other things in their career, and I think they became a lot happier. And so as we would onboard new members, we would go over that vision with them. We would say, hey, this is what our team is known for. This is where we're going. But now I can't forget the execution. They're doing the execution part. I can give them the tools, I can give them, everything, but they've got to give me feedback on how that execution is going. And I've got to be willing to change my strategy as I go along. So sometimes I've seen cases, and I'm sure you have too, Laura, where you have leaders who get very protective of their strategy and their vision. And you go to them and you say, this is not working. And they look at you and they're like, no, this is working. Why are you saying that to me? And you're like, this is not working. So I'm sure you've had experience with that too. And then we have the leaders that do listen, and it makes a huge difference. Within about a year to a year and a half, the team, and now instead of being known as the ones who could barely wipe down a desk, who could barely answer the phone, was the go-to team at the organization. If someone wanted to start a new project, my team became a part of that project. If someone wanted to change something, let's go talk to them and see what ideas they have. And it did a complete turnaround. Now, it could not have happened without both the strategy and execution. It had to have both. At one point, the organization, very top leadership, decided on a new mission statement. And, it trickled down, and our location did a new mission statement. So I went to the team and I said, hey, y'all seen the new mission statement for our location? How do we fit into it? What is it that we can provide to them to support this new, idea that they have? And the team together collectively came up with our team's mission statement that tied into the location and tied into ultimately the higher organization and everything. And then I was like, okay, that's great. We've got our mission statement. We say what we're about as a team. Now, what actions do we take to make that come true? And we stopped and we re-looked at all the work we were doing and came together to figure out what still matched that mission statement that we were executing, what was new things we needed to execute, and what did we need to say, okay, you know what? The new focus, the new strategy, this no longer works with that. So how can we change that?
Interesting. Do you think that building that two-way level of trust, because as I'm listening to you, I'm hearing that for the first time, the organization felt, or the team that you're talking about felt
Mm-hmm.
empowered and
Yeah.
connected to the organization at a much greater level. Do you believe that that created a sense of two-way trust between you and the team, that you would be transparent with them in how the organization needs to operate and or where the organization is going? Do you believe that made the difference?
I think it did make a huge difference with them, because before then, they basically were told, you do this, you do that. And it was kind of like, I expect you to be a robot, just do it. But there was no purpose behind it. There was no, this is how you fit in. And it was really interesting to watch their growth, because it wasn't because of anything I was doing. It was just like you said, building that two-way communication. They became more confident about their role. And so they would speak up more in meetings and stuff. And if, somebody was saying, hey, this is the way we should, this is what we should do and stuff, they no longer felt like they had to hide their voice. They were able to actually come forward and say, you know, I understand what you're trying to do, but realistically, that's not going to happen because I'm doing the job every day. I know this. So they felt like they could be heard finally and not just be thought of, as okay, I'm just doing it to do it. So yeah, the trust had to be there. And it was funny as a leader, of course you find out information that you're sitting there going, okay, I can't really divulge this right now. And so I had a thing with my team. I'm like, you can ask me anything. Now there's going to be times I'll look at you and say, I can't answer that right now. As soon as I can, I will. And I always followed up with that, but I can't do it right now. And it was
Right.
funny because one time they decided to do 360 surveys on manager level and above. And, that's a great tool to be able to hear feedback, not just from your boss, but other people, different levels that you work with. I think that's fantastic because it really does show you what, you're needing to grow in. And once we got it back, I, along with my director, decided to share our results with the team. So during one of our team meetings, we come in and we're like, okay, this is the areas you said I'm doing well in. This is areas that I need to improve on. And I acknowledge that. And this is some of the action steps I'm going to take to execute and to make that better. And we get done. And I'm like, okay, questions, anything, comments, anything? And first thing I hear is, well, do we get one? And I'm like, okay. And they're like, well, we want a 360 survey. I want to know what others are saying, all the peers and ones I work with and everyone else and leadership. I want to hear this. And this is frontline employees.
That's fantastic. That's
And
fantastic.
yeah,
That shows a true level of engagement and empowerment.
yeah.
Mhm. And
And
trust to be
it
able
was
to
funny.
accept and trust to be able to accept that
Yeah.
feedback. Yep.
That was amazing to me how they did that.
Mhm.
And what was really funny, now this is where your strategy and execution kind of sometimes fight each other. So, strategy wise, we all agree 360s are a great tool. Execution wise, leadership was we're only paying for to a certain point. We're not going to pay for every employee to have one of these. So now I've got my team asking, we want one. And leadership is saying no because we don't want to spend the money on, frontline employees because y'all leave, y'all transfer up, do other things. And so instead, what we did is I went out and found a free survey tool and built a 360 survey for them. And like I told them, I said, unfortunately, I will have to see the results. There's no way around it. Somebody's got to be able to pull it. I said, but if you trust me, all I'm going to do is put the results together and give it to you. And we did that. And the team trusted me to do that. And they really wanted it. So they were like, yeah, please put the results together. But there was, like you said, a lot of trust there. Once we did it, I shared the results with them, and then they built their own action plans based on it.
Today's episode is sponsored by the 32nd Annual Sterling Leadership Conference, happening May 29th through 31st at the Hyatt Regency Orlando. Whether you're a seasoned executive or an aspiring leader, the Sterling Conference promises an extraordinary journey. Don't miss this opportunity to ignite your leadership excellence. Visit thesterlingconference.com to learn more.
Very interesting. Just to throw my own little personal tidbit into that story, one of the organizations that I've worked with actually did do 360s. But the interesting thing about their approach was they would perform the 360s on the leadership, and then the leadership would say, okay, here's my results, give it to the frontline team and say, you create task forces to address these results. So the lack
Oh,
of leadership
no.
Ownership, yes. Isn't that funny? So the front line would say, "Why am I doing this 360? Because it comes back to me to fix it." The leaders are not
Mhm.
listening to their own feedback. And so, very interesting take on 360 and the value of 360. The whole
Mhm.
goal is to demonstrate ownership at the leadership level for the feedback. And when
Yeah.
the mid or frontline are the ones fixing the feedback for their very own leaders, it really deflates the whole purpose. And it breaks down that two-way trust that you're trying to
Mhm.
create by providing the feedback. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you
It
for
was
letting me
never.
interject that. But that's,
Oh,
and
yes,
whenever I
definitely.
hear 360, that little scenario of what I was exposed to in the past comes back up.
We always tease about it. One of the times that you learn as much of what not to do as you observe things, as much as what to do. And
So
I will
true.
never forget, I was with an organization and they had went through a layoff, and 2 weeks later, it was time for the employee engagement survey. Now, anyone who studies psychology will tell you this is the worst time to do one of these surveys because people are very raw, they're hurt, they've just lost their friends, there's survivor's guilt. All of this is going on. Not a good time. But this organization decided, nope, we're going to do it. So they call all of managers and directors and everything above, and they say, okay, we're going to share the results. And the director of HR is on there, and she gets on and she's like, okay, we got back the results and we're very disappointed. And of course, you're sitting here going, well, I'm sure
No
you are.
surprise. Yeah.
And she's like, you hurt our feelings. And I thought, okay, wait a minute. You cannot be saying what I just heard you say. And she continues on and she's like, all of upper leadership, our feelings are hurt because y'all were very, y'all said we weren't trustworthy, we weren't, being transparent. I mean, all of these things. And she's like, and we don't understand why you think your direct leadership is fine, but y'all just really made us feel bad. And I'm sitting here going, you're fussing at us about
Oh my goodness.
answering you during a time that we are all very raw in emotions and stuff. And you're instead of owning it and saying, "Hey, we chose a bad time for this survey," or "We want to do another one because we just think that, there was a lot of other influences on it," or whatever. You're blaming us for the results. And, kind of like you mentioned earlier, sometimes there is that disconnect.
Yeah, it's very interesting owning up. And honestly, leadership gives feedback
Mhm.
day to day, mid-year, year end, right?
Mhm.
They give feedback, we absorb it, we
Right.
embrace it, right? That's the rawness, like you said, of
Mhm.
receiving the feedback and truly embracing it. Sometimes it may hurt in the beginning, but the sooner you embrace and open your mind, it then just becomes communication. It's not
Yes.
feedback, it's communication of how you can improve, opportunities for
Mhm.
improvement. And the sooner you embrace it, the quicker it goes under the rug and people forget about it.
Yeah. Well, I think you brought up a great point. Besides trust, it's that communication piece. And sometimes we think communication is only what we say. But I'm a firm believer, especially with my experience and my background, that it's not just what you say, it's what you do. And if that was one thing I always try to keep in mind with my team is if I expect them to do and exhibit certain behaviors, trust, whatever the behavior was, I've got to be willing to do that myself. So I had to be willing when my leadership came to me and said, hey, we're doing this. And maybe we can't give you the full picture of why, but we have to do this for the business or whatever. if I wasn't willing to trust them, how could I expect my team to trust me? And
Correct.
so I think a lot of communication, we, I mean, a lot of us and everything can spin things very positive, or we can spin things certain ways or whatever. But it's when you combine that action with what you're saying that it becomes very powerful. And that was the one thing I tried to instill with my team was I'm going to let you do your job because you're the expert at it. But if you need me to help, even if it is to walk into a room and wipe down the tables, I will do that. But that's more your job than mine. I need to focus on how we're going to get ahead as a team, but we're both in this together. So if
Hmm.
you need me, I'm right there. And like I said, I always laughed about it. I finally, at one point, when I was managing people, I was like, okay, I've been working all on their growth and development opportunities and everything. And I was like, I got to work some on mine. So I went to my boss and said, hey, I want to take this program. And he's like, no, I really think this other program would be better for you. And I was like, fine with me. I just want something to, refresh my skills, help me out. And so the thing that they put me in, basically, we traveled every 6 weeks. And I told my team, I'm like, you're what you're doing. You don't need me there to tell you what to do. Now, if something does come up that you absolutely is new, you don't know what to do, then yes, go to the director, but or you can call me, but you don't need me there. Y'all can handle this. And we had worked hard on, like you said, empowering the team. So I'm at this conference, and every break, all the managers are on the phones and stuff, and I'm not. And somebody's like, "Why isn't your team calling you?" And I'm like, "Because they know what they're supposed to be doing, and they're doing it." I left them resources in case, but they don't need me. And it was really nice to be able to go and see that. And when I came back, I talked to my director. I was like, "How did they do?" And he's like, "They never did even come and ask me anything." And I said, "Okay." And he's like, "Yeah." He goes, "Somebody called out and they knew that they needed coverage. So they worked out the schedule and just sent me an email and said, hey, this is how we're going to handle this tonight." And he's like, "Okay." He's like, "Yeah, didn't really have to do much." So you can't do that though if you don't have trust and if you don't have communication.
So true.
Yeah.
Yep, so true. It's the foundation, the two-way
Mhm.
communication. It's the foundation to truly understanding.
Yes. Yeah. It's that as leaders, us being willing to listen,
Right.
and even as employees, us being able to listen. It's
That's
that
right.
one
That
component.
and that's why I love that Undercover Boss series
Mhm.
so much. Um, I haven't seen any recent episodes, but I'll tell you, I sit down and I would watch those episodes, especially the one on waste management, and I would
Mhm.
cry at the end.
Yes.
It was so touching. I would cry because the boss would come to the table with scholarship money or whatever it
Mhm.
might be, a promotion or a new opportunity. And oh my gosh, just tear jerking.
Yeah,
But it's the
I love that show
foundation.
too.
It is. It's the foundation. And when you have that, these organizations, they can soar when they
Yes.
can connect on the level where their employees are and they can empower and understand the system, the factory floor of every organization and how it operates. It's amazing what can be accomplished. And it's amazing, like you said in your first story, the talent that goes
Mhm.
unnoticed.
Yeah.
If you harness that talent, it's the secret sauce.
I definitely agree with you on that. And I think it's also not just coming up with a great mission statement or a great vision for where you're going, but getting what they see where they're going and aligning that. Um, it was funny. you know, the frontline employees, usually you think of those as very transient. And there were some that would move up, that got promoted. I mean, I had team members that were higher up in the organization than me. And I was so proud of them because I was like, hey, that's great. That was what they wanted. I had other team members that really actually loved what they did. And they're like, we don't really want to move somewhere else or do something else. So with them, I had to think of how can I keep your job interesting and you wanting to do this versus, okay, this is just what you have to do. But I
Right.
had to listen to them to find out what they wanted.
That reminds me of a scenario that I saw where I was auditing. I was doing an audit,
Mhm,
happened to be in the kitchen in the dishwashing department, and there was I think she was like a frontline supervisor,
mhm,
all dressed up, looked amazingly good, rubber smock, all of that covering her nice attire. And I asked her how long she's worked in the organization, and she said she's been in the dishwashing department 27 years. And I said,
wow,
wow, that's a long time to be in one department. Why have you stayed? And she basically said, I've stayed for the career advancement, which to me was a real head scratcher.
I was about to say that's where you kind of
So
pause and
I,
look.
right. So I asked her, well, can you describe career advancement? And she said, honey, I'm working in this military hospital, and the CEO, president, all the leadership know me by first name basis. They empower me to pick up a meal tray, and deliver it to a patient and sit on the edge of their bed and chat with them if I want. As long as my work is done, I can go out and mingle with the other staff. I can pitch in and do other things. It was all about, Nina, it was all about
Mhm,
empowerment and the trust level. It's that secret sauce I alluded to earlier that
mhm,
is created just through due respect.
yes.
Due respect between the levels. The levels are the levels, they have a
Mhm,
different focus. But when everyone works together and we're all aligned on the right strategy, and we're aligned to make that strategy work through execution,
mhm,
proper and appropriate execution. Like you're saying, it's amazing
yeah.
what outcomes. 27 years in the same department, wearing the same rubber smock, or
But she
somewhat
owned
of,
it.
she owned it.
She owned her career and she knew what was valuable to her. And look how much I'm sure everyone in that organization, she was a role model.
And everyone in the organization was a role model in their own respect,
True.
most likely. Yep.
Yeah, because when you start, I think one thing, Laura, and I'm sure you've seen it, when you start empowering the people to be the best that they can be, we use that saying, and it almost became a cliche, but really empower them and not put so many parameters around that they can't soar to their strengths, then it does become, the whole organization, they start influencing everything. And you start seeing other, departments, hey, I want to be known like that. I want to be, the best I can be in my field. And it does start having that ripple effect throughout the organization.
Right. It's no longer individuals thinking outside the
Mhm.
box, it's an organization as a
Yeah.
whole thinking outside the box.
Imagine what all can be accomplished with that.
Right. Especially in this day and age of Chat GPT and Trade
Oh, yes.
GPT and all of this AI, Gen AI. It's
Oh,
amazing.
AI is really, it has a lot of people scared. But I think it goes back to understanding what it is as a tool and that it's not replacing human thought. Does it help us sound better at times? Of course. But it's not
Right.
going to replace that creativity, that innovation that's going to come. And that was one thing I was really proud of the team for was they were innovators. And one of the things we did, especially after a layoff happened one time, is I was like, okay, we can't have just one person knowing how to do something. That does not work. When you go from a team of 13 people down to 6 and the duties haven't changed and they're still adding more duties, it's like, yeah, okay. So I would, have different, like you said, things for them to focus on. And I would try to talk to them and say, okay, what do you really enjoy doing? And no, I can't give you everything you enjoy doing, but let's give you a good mixture. So that way they didn't feel like, okay, I just have to do all things I hate. And then about 6 months in, we would rotate certain things. And then they would be the ones that would train the new, the person who hadn't been doing it. They would be the ones to train their peer and say, this is how you should do this. And as they're training, I would always tell them, look for what can be done better. Just because you've done this way for 6 months, don't think that the person you're talking to is looking at it fresh. They may have a great idea to incorporate.
Right.
So,
Automation, simplification, streamlining. Those are all the taglines that we're focusing on for the last 4 to 5 years, straight through processing.
mhm,
Yep.
right. And you've got to do that continual improvement.
Right. Well, it's been great chatting, Nina. Thank you so much. This has
I've
been
loved
very
it.
insightful. Yes, we'll have to have you back. I know that with your research, you've seen many different interesting things, and I'm sure that we can pull together another story.
That
Thank you
sounds
once
great. I'd
again.
love to come see you.
All righty. Thank you, Nina.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Sterling Visionary Voices, Insights for Role Model Leadership from the Sterling Council. Discover more and connect with us at sterlingvisionaryvoices.com.